So my channel is definitely not the channel that you come to, park at, and definitely not stay and look around and actually spend some quality time if you were looking for things that are not of substance and some deep and hard, difficult truths, okay? Or if you're not looking for that, rather. So today I want to talk about clarification in regards to something I've been saying often in previous videos about only God can accuse or excuse someone. And why is that? Because, He's God. But why did I say only He can accuse and excuse someone? And does that mean when someone, for example, has like a legal complaint, or they have a issue in a relationship, etc., that a person cannot communicate a desire or a grievance, etc., or even a need? Does that mean that? No. The clarification is this: that God defines what is right and what is wrong, what is righteous and what is evil. The opposite of that is not nothingness. It's not a void. There's no such thing. The opposite of that is every man doing what is right in his own eyes. And when the Bible says man, typically it is making reference to mankind, and that's understood intellectually. So in this instance, it would be the same when it comes to women, men, young people, that every person does chaotically what is right in their own eyes, even when something is predefined as righteous or unrighteous according to the Word of God. So I wanted to talk about, especially with the situation that I had with Uber, and it being one of several incidents with Uber of the same type. Hearing about the class action lawsuit that they're currently facing. I'm not keeping up with it intimately. I have a very busy life, as you might imagine. But nonetheless, just all that, including the prediction that I made that crime would become more complicated, most likely, due to the bizarre nature of, for example, if Uber cannot be trusted to take someone to a clearly defined destination, and let's say they never reach that, they never realize that destination, they don't even have to be, because I know that people move far too much, and it's very dangerous by presumption. The presumption is not necessarily that a worse crime has been committed by the driver of Uber, but absolutely someone who is not intentionally, with intention, purpose to take you to your predetermined destination. That is at the very least bizarre, and it can ultimately lead to a crime, of course, taking place, because that's an of course. So we won't even get into that. But what I am saying, because I teach anyone who wants to learn from my channel, okay, you do so at your will, against presumption. So the other difficulty is this with investigations and crime in the future, with all of this messiness going on, is that a crime can take place at a destination that is random, that is bizarre, that was not predetermined, and that makes no sense. And so the driver and the one who actually commits the worst crime, because I think both should be crimes if it's purposeful, don't necessarily have to have any type of connection, which you can imagine would introduce a massive amount of confusion if that were to happen. I'm going to go out on a limb because I'm that type of woman. And I'm going to say something. It could be categorized as reckless, but I am going to say it because I feel like the Lord is okay with me saying it. I mean, if He's not, He knows where I live. Truly, really and truly, I do listen to Him. But I'm going to say it boldly because at this point, it's either people are going to step up and take appropriate action or they're not. So I'm going to say exactly what could happen and what people with such intent will most likely act on if they get wind of this upload. If no one with responsibility does proper due diligence. Okay? So frankly, if I am a part of a racket, I'm not saying that Uber is, but I'm saying if I were a part of a racket, or let's say I want to be because I see this huge gaping safety issue that no one is properly addressing with a large company that is multi-state, okay, in the United States. This glaring gaping hole is being left unattended. It's literally the broken window theory in sociology. So since nobody cares, at some point, something is going to fill that gaping hole, whether it be a good thing or a bad thing. Typically, it's a bad thing with the broken window theory. So this situation where people are not realizing their proper destinations, or they have to repeatedly remind the driver, even if it's like 15 minutes or like 10 minutes, literally up the street, of the right destination. This continuing to be a chronic issue to the point where it's resulted in a class action lawsuit for even worse cases. Okay. According to others, this is minor. I take it very seriously. But according to others, this is minor compared to what they say happened, okay, to them. So if I was a racket and I was watching this and it is ongoing and no one is doing proper due diligence, and all that is happening is a class action lawsuit, but yet it seems to be culminating in no type of real substantive action, okay? Then what I would do if I was a racket looking at this, and if I was actually intelligent, which some criminals actually are intelligent, I see this and I'm going to let some time go by, and plenty of time has gone by. Okay. Like I said, if someone gets wind of this with intent, they will act upon it. There's no reason for them not to, because no one is properly addressing this. So I let some time go by. It's been years, actually. And when I see that still nothing is happening and the coast is literally clear legally because nothing is happening, the window is still broken, I am going to suggest that anyone who is a specific type be dropped off in specific places, quite literally. And this is ridiculous because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm not an investigator. I studied sociology. I'm not even a sociologist. I'm none of these things, but yet I see these things, but it seems everybody else is blind to them. So what I would do is have people of a specific type, for example, blonde, blue eyes, 5'6" to 6'5". Okay, Taylor Swift look. Okay. If it was kids, I'm not gonna go into that, but it is what it is. Some people, they do that. African Americans, okay, don't get any affluent African Americans. Only go to places where they're getting picked up at the projects. I would be very specific. Picked up at the projects, leave them at this point, dedicated points. If it starts to look really suspicious, and that's going to take time, because a smart criminal knows that certain cases, simply the investigators, whether it is, I don't think everything is racism, you guys. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Pardon me. But certain cases, simply, I have seen it myself, experienced it myself. It's either they lack the resources or they work in a system, because I don't like to presume that everyone is lazy. I don't even think that. They work in a system in which they're not necessarily rewarded for dedicated hard work. I think when we interface with other people, that we presume too much. We presume that this investigator has a boss that actually appreciates dedicated hard work, has a boss that is not politically biased, has a boss that actually is looking for the truth. We need to understand something. You could be interfacing with someone who is truly devoted to the work, but they could be working in an ecosystem that does not care. I don't presume either one, but I understand real life and I understand this can exist. Okay? And it gives you a bigger bigger view that, oh, this person is resistant to, this person doesn't want to properly investigate, this person doesn't want to properly close this case, this person doesn't want to find it. That's not necessarily true. But people don't necessarily, especially when they are not their own entity, when a person has a employer, they are an employee and they have an employer, they are kind of at the behest of that employer. So if that employer really truly does not care, that is going to compromise the cases. So you can imagine that, especially if you're dealing with a competent and intelligent criminal racket, then it could be a year or two before they even conceive that some of these missing people have been trafficked, because Uber drivers are leaving them at dedicated locations. No, duh. Like literally dedicated locations for pickup. I mean, a blind person, Stevie Wonder, could put that together. I am so lost at how people are not making this connection. I am like, so once again, I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying this has happened. I think it's insane that no one is making this connection, that this is not something difficult. This is like the literal next step. Like, how can people not see this? Like, it's so crazy. I feel like I'm living in bizarro world. Like literally, they literally give them the environment, the formula, the vehicles, the environment, the formula, the broken window, okay, in order to have the proper ecosystem to traffic people, especially vulnerable people. And if they were inclined to do that, especially with vulnerable people, it's much more easier. They could even elude, because I feel crime, I suggested that crime would possibly evolve. I predicted crime might evolve. The Bible actually says, I believe it gives some indication that might support my theory that crime will evolve, okay? And if investigators do not evolve with the criminals, what do you think is going to happen? Because one or the other is going to outpace. And who do you think is going to be the one that outpace if investigators don't start thinking outside the box? Like, gone are the days where it's just obvious. Like, no more. I mean, but you do have to think, okay? You have to think. You have to have foresight. If I was a criminal in this situation, what would I do? In this specific situation, with these factors, what is plausible and possible? Including in the bizarre realm, where you have an instance where maybe they're not connected. Maybe it's not a racket. But then again, another thing, once again, I'm not a cop. How am I thinking of all this and no one else is? It's like people are blind. Okay, a third scenario. I have yet a third scenario that is not far-fetched. It's literally foreseeable. It's a foreseeable issue stemming from this one broken window. Okay? The third scenario is this. Somebody is always watching, if they are inclined to do so. Not a normal person, but criminals, yes, or at least the smart ones. So I'm going to notate what drivers do this, or even down to what families or what individual persons this happens to. I'm going to make a mental note of that. And when I do, I will study their compromise, because that's what that is. When you have a pre-specified, predetermined destination, but yet your route has been rerouted without your consent, that is compromise. So I'm a criminal watching this take place on more than one occasion, and I'm making note of it because I'm not stupid. Okay? So when this happens, eventually, I don't have to have a formal connection with Uber. I don't even have to have a formal connection with the victim or victims. But I can literally start to I can start to take advantage of, because many crimes are crimes of opportunity. I can start to take advantage of the observation of these certain individuals and certain groups being compromised on a continuous basis. And because when people are going to inquire, when investigators are going to investigate, when people are going to look, especially if people are mentally and intellectually lazy, they're going to look for the destination. But the problem is, if they weren't taken to the destination, who's going to conceive that they never realized the destination? So we really need to pay attention to what happened between the pickup point and the destination that may have never actualized. Because guess what? That's what a smart criminal would do. So if our police officers, if our investigators, both state and federal, do not figure that out, Houston, there's going to be a problem. They must evolve with the crime. They're getting smarter, and the investigators have to get smarter. They're getting more bizarre, and the investigators are going to have to start thinking more outside the box. Because when there's no rhyme or reason, you have to literally be like a pit bull hound dog on it with everything to find that this, and it may make the investigator look crazy. Like a good investigator will stick to, if they know they're right. If you know you're right, you will stand 10 toes down. They were dropped off at McDonald's. Yes, the destination, populous people, America, was the hospital. But I believe that they were dropped off at McDonald's. I can't explain why. But the victim was dropped off at McDonald's. That's what all the facts suggest. No, ma'am. No, sir. No, populace. It doesn't make sense because they were headed to the hospital. But we have no supportive evidence to suggest that they ever stepped foot into the hospital. So we are paying attention to what happened between the pickup point and the McDonald's, because that's where our investigation shows they were last. Even though that was not the destination. Because whether Uber drivers could be in on the human trafficking, whether they could be, whether they could be sympathetic to people who are involved with human trafficking, because everything doesn't have to be formal. You must think outside the box. Whether they are sympathetic to individuals or know individuals who are into that, or whether simply it is a criminal that has been watching, observing the broken window. This person is inebriated. This person keeps being dropped off. When they go to their dental appointment, they're being dropped off 2 blocks away from their dental appointment. That gives me 2 blocks of access to them. If any police officer goes into that, if they're lazy and if their boss does not reward diligent research, they will just conclude that, I don't know what they'll conclude, quite frankly, probably nothing, because many cases go unsolved, probably for a lot of these reasons. But nonetheless, what are you going to do? Just drop the case when you find that they never what? I mean, okay, that's exactly what is happening. It's not funny. It's not funny, right? But nonetheless, right? So you have a situation where, Brenda, or I'm going to say Jeff, because people for some reason assume that crimes can't happen to men. And that's just the silliest, dumbest thing ever. So Jeff never made it. He keeps being dropped off. Let's say Jeff is not even disabled or anything. He's not inebriated. He's not disabled. But he keeps going to his doctor's office. He goes to his doctor's office for dialysis. But someone is watching him. And someone eventually, on the 8th time, because they've been watching him for a while, and most people who go to a doctor's office, would you not agree that they're dropped off at the door? I mean, if people, I'm starting to give people the crazy that they treat me like I am. So I'm going to start talking to people, y'all, like that. If people are going to do this, I'm going to start talking like, is it crazy to go through the front door? When you drop people off places, do you usually drop them off at the side of the place? Do you drop them off at the dumpster, which is typically behind the place? Or do you drop them off a few blocks away so they can, I don't know, get some exercise or something? Or do you take them to the front door of the establishment that you're taking them? Since we're gonna, since I'm crazy, let's play this, okay? So if I don't drive, but if I was driving someone to a destination, I'm taking them to the front door of the destination. Okay? And so unless there is a side door, perhaps for accessibility, I'm taking them to the front door of the establishment. I have no reason to drop you off 2-3 blocks away from the place that I'm taking you, because I'm not a criminal or weirdo freak. Okay? So, Jeff has been watched by someone who is not affiliated, because we already know they could be affiliated. That would be easy. Too easy, quite frankly, because the American people are kind of handing this to the trafficker. Here's a free gift. That nobody should want, but here's a free, easy, broken window, okay? And look, we're going to give you 5 more years head start, okay? So 100 more people can go missing, and then we're going to be all shocked, right? 5 years from now, someone is finally going to get a clue, and we're going to all trauma bond, which I'm not going to participate, by the way, because I'm over it, okay? I don't play that game, especially with human lives. I'm not trauma bonded with none of y'all, okay? Not over something that was completely foreseeable and preventable. I'm not doing it. I don't play that game. So, and then eventually close that door and close that window and fix the window, repair it, okay? So, but all this could have been avoided, right? It doesn't mean that maybe another crime would have happened to Jeff. Or maybe Jeff could have had a sudden massive heart attack. But let's not be silly. Not be silly. Let's be intellectually honest. Jeff being accosted by this person who was watching him go to his dialysis appointment every time his Uber dropped him 2 blocks away from the doctor's front door. That gave the criminal ample opportunity. Ample opportunity. Okay? And that is unnecessary risk. I categorize that as unnecessary risk. In life, everything is a risk. Someone could come into the office. Let's not be intellectually dishonest or absurdly silly. Of course, someone can come into the office and shoot it up. But typically, people avert some risk simply by going to the front door of the establishment that they're going to. Can we not agree on that? Okay, so while there's all these other risks that could come in life, this is an unnecessary risk. This is egregious because it is chronic, because it is a broken window, because it's unnecessary, because it's completely preventable. That's what makes it egregious. It also is egregious because we cannot presume that traffickers will not purposely sign up for Uber, since Uber seems to hire anybody off the street, literally. Like, Uber is hiring off the street. And I don't have a problem with prisons. I honestly didn't want to say it because I actually advocate. I advocate for prisoners. But I do not advocate for people who hurt other people. Okay? Not people who are continuing on hurting other people. All right? I don't got no beef for prisoners. But seriously, just to like get y'all's minds to exercise. I feel like Uber is they out here hiring in the prisons. They're hiring like on the street. They just anybody can work. Apparently anybody can work for Uber. It does, like anybody, okay? Just anybody. Every random in the world can qualify to work for Uber and drive decent people places. I didn't even say to their destination, because clearly that's the problem when you hire random criminals. I can't even say to their destination because that's the problem, right? Like, it's I can't. Oh my goodness. So and you have let's get into more spiritual aspect, okay? Because I don't even know if they'll let me upload this. I don't know if the YouTube overlords will allow this to be uploaded, so I might as well try to make it as quick as possible. Hopefully this hasn't been more than 15 minutes. It probably saying 2 hours. That's weird. I doubt it's been 2 hours. I highly doubt that. But nonetheless, let me go fast. And I'm gonna say hard things, which is kind of, some will say humorous, but it's sad stuff. So it's not really funny, but it is kind of ironic because typically when you talk about very serious things, you try to give it some time. Okay, because I talk about very serious things, which is why it takes so much time. So I'm about to do something that I don't normally recommend, and I'm going to talk about very serious things with rapid speed. But please understand, of course, there's still very serious topics, okay? So I'm going to talk about something serious as personal conviction, okay? And the lead that I established right at the genesis of this upload was perfect, the chef's kiss for this reroute that I'm taking, okay? But in my case, it's not dangerous to you. or bizarre. Okay. So we're going to like take a little turn, and go off, but it's similar. It branches off in why I feel is a perfect topic in regards to all this Uber and safety, etc., and criminality and stuff like that, and cases evolving, and the need for investigators to evolve. But then also, don't take everything personal. These people have to work with an ecosystem that may not be supportive of them giving dedicated interest to your case. Okay? Seriously. And some people are just evil. In the Bible, there was this woman with a judge, and she literally had to go to the judge repeatedly in order to get justice because the judge simply didn't want to give it to her. But God eventually blessed her because the woman kept trying. That's literally what it literally was. She just kept trying. And so God blessed her because she never gave up. She persevered. Okay. But nonetheless, also, I'm before I go into that little off ramp, I'm going to also cover a private entity. So what if it's like a private, like investigator or something like that? They work with the populace. You may be in a populace. Now, I know I talk about crazy stuff because we live in a crazy world, but they live in a populace where, look, if people are so inclined, an environment is so inclined to not be favorable and charitable to your case, right? Thank God, God can change things. Like, clearly, from what I talk about, you can tell I'd be going through things. I mean, is it not obvious? Obviously, right? But we know God can change things amazingly, superbly, okay? No, he can truly do it. He has, okay? But nonetheless, there still be trials and tribulations, right? But we need to also give credence to this, because this is true in certain cases where you might have that private entity. It could be a private small group or entity, or even a huge entity or investigator, and they are charitable to your cause, your case. They truly want to know what happened. But you are in a time and an environment where, and I know that this is not a message people want to hear, but guess what? There was a time and environment where, slave cases, there was no such thing. I know you don't want to think about that. And you want to kind of, I'm sorry, that was presumptuous. I apologize. I teach y'all not to be presumptuous, and then I was presumptuous and insulting. My apologies. Some do not want to hear. They want to pretend like these things do not exist that complicate life and matters and settling matters. This is why a lot of things never settle. They never settle. There's always questions, always curiosities, always intrigues, always troubles, always problems. Because people, okay? Some people are resistant, very resistant for whatever reason, very resistant to settling a matter, okay? And until Jesus comes and finalizes everything, unfortunately, that's going to be a part of life that we have to learn how to navigate with godly wisdom. Like, Lord, I'm trying to look for these answers, but Lord, first, do you want me to have the answers? Because sometimes God wants you to let it go. That's difficult to hear. Many preachers don't want to preach that. Sometimes he wants you to let it go. Sometimes he wants you to push and push and push and not give up like that woman and the judge. Okay? And sometimes, like I said, with slavery, and guess what? People don't want to admit that because it's embarrassing, but that still, politics still exists, where you might have a strong grievance, but you are in an environment that's not charitable. It's not conducive to your political environment. They don't care. They don't care that Isabella was missing, because Isabella is a Hispanic with no job, no identity really, no papers. And she's kind of like just a question mark to me as a Christian, and to you, hopefully, and to God, she's precious. And we want to know what happened to Isabella. We don't care that she came off a boat and just disappeared. We want to know what happened to her, because she's a human being. And human beings don't just go vanish. Something happens. They have a sudden heart attack and die. Someone kidnaps them. There's a horrible accident, but the body has not been accounted for. Maybe she was swimming and a current got her. But nonetheless, human beings do not vanish. So we want to know what happened to Isabella. But guess what? If the environment is socially charged and doesn't care, do you really think that resources are going to go to her case? When that is not what anybody truly prioritizes, finding Isabella, a literal nobody. Unfortunately, to people who are unsaved and even fake Christians who are just pretending, a literal nobody. To us, she is somebody, simply because and we also understand that if a crime can happen to her, because we have godly wisdom. So if someone can make a crime on her, we know they could commit a crime on us. But we're not motivated by self-interest, because we have the Holy Spirit, who says God leaves the 99 and he will pursue the one. Man's love will pursue fame and will let all kinds of horrible, I'm trying to tell you, all kinds of horrible, detestable mistreatment happen to the one for the favor of the 99. Like, oh, she's bitter. Oh, she's angry. I'm actually very happy. But guess what? I'm also very honest. I'm not gonna play delusional here. This is the real world and how it functions. God wouldn't have said that if it was common. The Bible backs up what I say, and that's all the backup I need. The Bible would not have made it a point to point that out, that God will divert his attention away from the 99 that are okay to go seek out that one that is in trouble. Because that is a character trait of God. That is not the primary character trait of people. Especially when there's nothing in it for them. Like, unfortunately. Okay. So, I have said this repeatedly. I'm going to repeat it again, because we're going to go back to the U-turn now. Because I think I made my point clear, and I don't want to be exhaustive and insulting to your intelligence. I made my point clear that whether it's because the essential point was this, wrapped up in a nutshell, that whether it's a person who is a simple employee investigating, or whether it's a entity that actually has autonomy, like a private person, singular person, or a small group, or even a big group, they can be at the behest of the social climate. And your case can be mucked up because of peopling all over your heartbreaking case, which is the most tragic thing I can think of. But unfortunately, fortunately, let's put that on a good point. But God, okay? If that's ever happened to you, I want you to read Job. There's light at the end of the tunnel, okay? So getting back to something, like I said, I haven't entered the rapid fire, very serious stuff. So let me start with the first thing that I was going to say that is exhaustive, that I've said several times. I apologize to those of you who you love the Lord. You know right from wrong. Look, I'm not trying to be insulting to here. Please understand. I'm going to say this. just to give some, because I feel at this point, to not be insulting, I need to let up some, because I am very private. I need to give up some type of clarity, okay? Because I keep repeating myself. So I'm going to say this. The reason why, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who know right and know wrong, and so when I say things that are clearly wrong, and it's like almost like, should I be listening to this? Because obviously that's wrong. First of all, you're not necessarily who I'm addressing, obviously. But I want to say the reason why I am doing this, and some of you may have come to this conclusion already by your own, just through intelligent observation, is because obviously I'm observing. Okay, so I'll share that with you. I haven't done that before. I'm observing concerning behavior. Okay, so that is why I get on here and repeat certain things that are very serious, and for some people would be common sense, like what's right and what's wrong, because obviously in my everyday life, I'm observing things that make me think that people need to hear what is wrong and what is right. Okay, so I just wanted to give, because I feel like someone who is really trying to connect and really trying to provide, good communication, eventually, if sharing more is required in order for that to be conducive, they will. And I want to operate in good faith and just share that input. Okay, so this is why I'm repeating myself so much. Okay, to the point where it's like, are the people like they probably are not hearing this, because my channel is not big, so they're either not hearing it or they are deaf spiritually. Because that is why, for those of you who are wondering, that's why I keep repeating myself. So once again, it is ultimately up to you. Hard truth number one, primary. This is going to be the umbrella truth from which all other truth is going to stem from. Ultimately, the Bible says, work out your own salvation. This is a very difficult, hard truth. Meat and potatoes, with fear and trembling. This is this is not in contest. It's not in opposition to any other thing I said. Whenever something, especially biblical, mostly biblical, because really I can make mistakes, but the Bible doesn't make mistakes. If it seems like it's contradictory, you need to go back and diligently re-listen and remove any presumption you may have, because I promise you, it's not contradictory. It's actually an umbrella. So some people, this is keeping in mind, because I've done tons of work. Anyone who says that I didn't is a lie. It's right here, all for the looking and listening. So we know ultimately there's a reason why God said that. It has purpose. It has purpose. It may seem, well, it's not seeming. It is direct and informative. That it is up to you to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Your salvation should be at the forefront and the most important priority in your life. And God said it that way because he knows, I'm going to list off some things. It's going to be fast. Okay, so listen with your attentive ears. He knows that people are going to do things sometimes that provoke you. He knows that people are going to mistreat you, potentially. He knows that sometimes people who should teach you and teach you well certain things of his word, they will fail to do that. He knows that there will be false teachings also. He knows that there will be trying situations in life, some things that you brought upon yourself and some things that you did not deserve that will potentially happen to you. And that is why you notice how all those things, they make sense, but they still fall, ladies and gentlemen, under the umbrella. Work out your salvation because it's not mine. Don't work out my salvation. Don't work out Larry's salvation. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, because that is the most important thing. And next is, of course, if you have family, your children, wife and children, etc. Okay, absolutely must. But so I'm gonna move on from that. That was blunt. That was fast. Now I could spend an hour on that. It is what it is. Remember, they're supposed to be rapid fire. Serious things, rapid fire. Okay. There are, many, I've noticed that one person is too many. So actually on the technicality, I am correct. Now, how many exactly? I don't want to make the same mistake as Elijah. He presumed that there was nobody righteous but him. Okay. So I don't want to make that glaring. Obviously, that's a glaring mistake. And he was better than me. I'm not deluded. He's better than me. So what I will say is this: too many people, and that's I'm technically can't be wrong, because even one person is too many people. Too many people do not truly possess. And once again, why am I saying it? Obviously, I'm observing something. Unfortunately, right? Okay. So if I came on here to talk to you about ice cream a lot, hopefully that day will come, because that means I'm seeing a lot of ice cream. Hopefully I will stop coming on here talking about such serious things, because people are doing things that I'm seeing that make me think this is what you need to be really hearing. Okay. But nonetheless, this is going to be, for some people, it might be potentially insulting, but that goes under the umbrella, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling also. Okay. Don't be so insulted that you don't pick up the word of God and eat it and digest it. Okay. So too many people, I almost slipped up. Too many people lack true conviction because they do not adhere to what I entered with the genesis of this video, that God is the only one who accuses and excuses. And because they lack this, because they have idolized themselves, their own conscience, their own feeling, their own hearts, and other people and stuff, they live in a state of constant confusion and chaos. And from my observations, it's specifically with, I'm going to say, I believe with crimes such as rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, that both men and women, more than one would care to believe, potentially, are at risk of committing this crime because they have not given themselves over completely to the Lord. And the only reason why they do not act it out and walk it out is because I'll list them, they're afraid of going to prison. They're afraid of going to jail. In some cases, they're afraid of the victim actually, once they realize what's happening, the victim will fight back and defeat them, potentially fatally. In some cases, they are afraid of an animal that they may have, a security system, or people that person knows. So maybe they're not afraid of the person, but that person knows people, or people know that person, and they care enough about them that there will be some form of retaliation. Also, some people are afraid, but many people, if all those things fail, sadly, the final constraining thing, which just like, I'm not going to say slavery, because the Bible, I don't believe clearly, now I could be mistaken, but I read the whole Bible more than once, but it does not clearly damn slavery. It damns mistreatment. It damns hatred. but it does not clearly damn the act itself of slavery, from my understanding. But clearly, the hatred, the rape, the mistreatment, the brutal beatings, the brutality, the harassment, the lies, the slander, the abuse of children, the abuse of women, the not allowing to marry, etc., etc. Well, in that case, actually, let me remove that, because some slaves were eunuchs. Yeah, it gets deep here, right? Deep and intellectually honest as possible. I'm not a theologian, but I'll be respecting the word, okay? So even then, I suppose a slave could be forbidden to marry, but then that kind of conflicts with the that being put as a doctrine of demons. But I wonder, in a case of slavery, wow, I literally never thought of that. That's a question for the theologians. Like, okay, well, if a person is a slave, they may not be able to marry. So is the master in trouble for a doctrine of demon for not allowing the slave to marry? Does that mean that they could potentially still be a slave, but the master has to allow the slave to marry? That's an interesting question, y'all. Whoa. I don't think I've ever heard anybody ask that question. I am the type of woman that would present that question, okay? Because this is that type of channel of substance. But nonetheless, the final frontier here, if you will, is the consensus of society. And the tragic thing is, at one time, society gave consent to the brutal treatment of slaves. Society gave consent for two slaves that were married to be separated, for a slave who was a mother to be separated from her baby, for slaves to be brutally raped, both men and women and children. And society gave consent to this. And the tragedy here is this, that like, I don't want to be, Lord, I hope I don't regret this, but I'm going to do it. I know I'm going to do it. Okay. I don't want to be a spiritual. I don't want to be a spiritual. I don't want to be a moral. I don't want to be a spiritual and moral bastard. I want to be a daughter of Christ. And being a daughter of Christ, he accuses and excuses me. So if he says something is wrong, it's wrong no matter what state law says. Something is wrong no matter what federal law says. Something is wrong no matter what the Constitution says, or what the Russian law says, or what Indonesian law says. If I travel seas, one thing I love about being a follower of Jesus Christ is if I go overseas to any country, it's still wrong. It's just as wrong as it was when I was on American soil. And it's wrong in Indonesia. And it's wrong in Germany. And it's wrong in Tokyo. And that is the difference between a Christian that is fake and a real one. And it's sad that many will marry the fraud. But not all. Because I feel like the Holy Spirit is reminding me in that category, especially with marriage, because he knows that's a sensitive topic for me, that I could slip like Elijah in that. So there are many Christians who are not married to frauds, but I know that there are many who sadly are. For me, that would be hell. I do not want a man whose moral behavior changes with the territory that his foot lands on. That is, to me, that's hell. I do not want that. And no person should want that for themselves. But do you know, sadly, for any of you who have not determined in your mind that this is wrong because God says it is evil. I can't do it. I cannot steal my neighbor's stuff. I cannot rape my neighbor. I cannot lie on my neighbor. I cannot snatch my neighbor's child. I cannot molest my neighbor's child. I can't shoot my neighbor's dog for no good reason. I cannot steal my neighbor's husband. I cannot steal my neighbor's wife. I cannot do these things, whether I'm in Japan, Tokyo, Russia, China, Great Britain, America. And I'm like, it is sad because I know for a fact, I'm not going to, but I know. Now, here's the good part. Because I've met some real ones. By the grace of God, there are people who truly have conviction. I know that for a fact. I know both for a fact, unfortunately. There are people in this world that truly have conviction. They're not faking it. They're not doing it because other people agree, like, yo, this is wrong, so I'm gonna say it's wrong too because they're saying it's wrong. No, they truly believe it, and I've seen them pass the test. They are truly people of conviction. And I'm gonna end this here asking you, because really that's only something God and you know, because many people don't get caught. Do you truly believe that crimes are wrong? Do you truly believe, first of all, do you truly believe that God is the only one who can accuse and excuse? Then after you believe that, do you believe that everywhere you go? Because this is everywhere. If it's wrong on planet Earth and it's wrong in outer space. So if you could get a ticket on one of Elon Musk, this is why I love Jesus. And trust me, if you're allergic to real ones, you will break out in the worst sort of hives around me because I'm a real one. I'm a real one. And I'm unrepentant about it. My morals are not going to change from one state to the next state or one city to the next city or when I get a ticket somewhere else. It's painful to imagine the crimes that are committed by Americans who were simply scared to go to prison here. So they go other places and mess with people's children and rape people's daughters and rape people's sons and traffic people. And that's the worst. I wish our people could go over there, get them and put them in prison over here. I wish they could. But I don't think that's their jurisdiction. But I wish they could. I wish they had the resources to do it. Because I'm like, you should have known if it was wrong here, why the heck you think all of a sudden it's okay to do it over there? And then you're going to come back over here because that's what some of them doing. And then you have the nerve to come back over here as if we knew what you did, we would want you back. That we would let you board the back on the plane and live amongst decent society. No, ladies and gentlemen. If something, God is this. You cannot take someone else's husband on planet Earth. And if you got a ticket by Elon Musk to go into outer space, you cannot sleep with her husband in outer space. And I love that about God. I love that about God because God don't play and he's consistent. Are you consistent? Are you a person of conviction? Or does your conviction change from city to city? Or depending upon the situation or whether you're being monitored, heavily monitored? Do you need to be babysat in order to not commit crimes, steal, lie, slander, make false calls on people, in order to not touch people's kids, in order to not rape people? Do you have to be heavily monitored in order to just pretend? You have to be under the fullest kind of constraint. The next step is prison. So if it were not for the laws, the state laws, the city ordinances, the state laws, the federal laws, you would be doing all these things. If that's you need Jesus now and today. Now and today. Immediately. We all need Jesus, not just you. But really and truly, this end times delusion is not true, because it's being spread that whatever feels right to you is right. That is not true, because you know what feels right to certain people? Exactly what I said. And just because it's illegal in America don't mean it's illegal somewhere else. Then what? If you say, well, it's not against the law. Well, in some places what should be illegal is perfectly legal. But God says it's illegal. So still, I will not come off of this. God determines what is right. God determines what is wrong. And in this life, you will either be a fraud or you will be a confused, inconsistent person who lacks conviction. Because different states have different laws, and different places on this earth have different laws. But certain things are crimes in heaven. And no one should have to stalk. No one should have to have you on camera. No one should have to have you on camera. No one should have to babysit you. That is the ultimate sign that you are not a fully grown, a contributing adult to society. When people have to constantly babysit you in order for you to act like you have sense, you are not there yet. You ain't fully baked. You ain't fully baked. Because no adult should need that type of supervision. So if you need that supervision, first of all, you need Jesus. But if you refuse that, you either need to be locked up so that you cannot hurt other people no more. Because that's the purpose of locking people up. Even though I be advocating for people who be locked up. So clearly I'm not motivated by hate. Don't be intellectually honest. But clearly the place for people who will not stop hurting other people is prison. So just because you have not you have not been caught yet. So I'm going to end it now because actually I've said all I need to say. And I would just be repeating myself at this point. So I covered everything perfectly. I went deep into Uber situation and gave you a myriad of examples with nuance. I mean, I even went into the nuance. Okay, that I went in depth with. I didn't go in depth with these constraints. Okay, because you might as well call the last part constraint. Okay, some people have it, some people don't. And some people, the little constraint that they do have is because everybody has to be up their rear end and for them not to commit crimes, which is the saddest, tragic thing ever for a grown person. Okay, so for the first Genesis, God accuses, God excuses. Okay. The second, Uber, and all the nuanced ways. And yes, that was bold. And yes, it could. And look, if the Lord wanna, he will. And he totally can. If he's going to spank my butt because he's like, well, that was not what you said, is not a lie, but it's not expedient because these people are not going to believe this. So I'm going to whoop your butt, which he might. Hopefully he don't. Because when he does, he's very effective. Hopefully he don't. But he knows he knows I have the purest of motivations. And I'm very bold. And typically, yes, like the bolder someone is, typically they are dealt with, when they need to be, because God is good. He's not abusive, because they are bold, because I am bold. But nonetheless, he knows I have the purest intent. But yes, I could get a spanking, even though it's pure intent, if it's not his will, because he knows what he permits me to do or not. I didn't ask him before time, one of the factors in bold, to try to coerce. And one of the few times, because normally I don't do that. That's not my style. Okay. Action. Okay. On the part of people to do the right thing. Because I literally gave the criminal, like, here. This is literally the broken window and the many ways you can use it. But I'm expecting, because I don't want the crime to happen. I'm expecting people to do what they're supposed to do. But the Lord could be like, but they're not going to do that. And so I'm going to whoop your butt because people are going to get hurt because someone's actually going to do this. And that's not good. That is really not good. That's obviously not what my objective was. Okay. But nonetheless, this dropping people off at random places, explain to, if you do not believe that I was hitting it on the head, you really need to go back because I covered it beautifully. The only problem is that what decent people fail to listen to with respect, a criminal literally, sadly, will be like, wow, that's a good idea. Like, wow, that's a brilliant idea. That is terrible. That's terrible. Don't be the decent people that do nothing. Don't do that. When the criminals are active and doing everything. When Satan stays busy. Don't be the lazy, decent person. Don't do that. Okay? So, then I went into, yes, constraint. Some people's constraint is as shallow as the changing laws, which clearly slavery has proven can be so fallible and messed up, unfair, unrighteous, and oppressive, and sometimes downright demonic, such as trans children. Literally, that was a few years back. We only just now are getting that nastiness behind us. This is what we have devolved into legally. And some people's moral conviction is as shallow as what a piece of paper that is not the Bible says. When that piece of paper used to make some of them slaves, which in and of itself is not the problem, but slaves that were raped, beat, not allowed to marry, and then sometimes when they were married, the family was split up and the children were recklessly split up from the parents. Mother could not breastfeed her own baby, but she had to breastfeed someone else's baby. Okay? These things are clearly wrong. So if you're, because I have heard many people who consider themselves decent say, well, I follow the law, then I'm going to tell you this. You are a tragic tragedy because the law has messed up so many times. It is tragic that your morality is whatever the law says because the law messes up constantly. Oh my goodness. Can you possibly be serious? I would never say that. Like, oh, I'm a decent person because I do whatever the law says. Hell no. The law, there are some laws that I feel are from the depths of hell. I am not going to insult myself by saying that I do whatever the law says. I have a higher law, and I love it because it is universal, meaning God's law follows me wherever I go. So you can expect me to be a decent human being wherever I go. The scary thing to me is there are people getting married now who don't believe that. I would never get married to someone who cannot say that. Because once they go to another territory, another country, they may be another person. And who wants that? Not me. So this is the conclusion, and hopefully I can get this uploaded. Hopefully I can get this uploaded.